Thank you so much. So we will now try to bring everything together and define the action plan for where we need to go. And I would like to invite all the panelists to take the seats. So Imer Cook, Andrzej Ryś, Magdalena Bem-Andrzejewska, Paweł Przybyźlikowski, and Jakob Rav. Very good. So we have heard during the day today. Oh, maybe you sit here and I sit here. Yeah. That's very good. So in this session, I would like us to discuss how we can leapfrog, because I think the sentiment over these 2 days has been such that there is a lot of positive energy, a lot of wonderful ideas, but that we are really urging now this ability to move forward faster. So how do we do that? Of course, in the context of the life science strategy, sometimes you need to flip the script to prepare for it. And I want to refer to an article in Foreign Affairs in 2022 called Single Market Power. The subtitle was How Europe Surpassed America in Quest for Economic Integration. I'm not making a mistake here, how Europe surpassed America. This was 2 US-based researchers who have studied market harmonization in great detail and arrived at the conclusion that actually Europe is further than the US, but the results are poorer. So what it means is that we need to see where the problem really lies, right? Before we jump to the conclusion that it's the regulatory burdens or the lack of harmonization, what have you. That as well, I think in the life sciences area, this conclusion would probably not apply, but they were looking across the board at the single market as such. I mean, one obvious solution is the banking license, which in Europe you get for the entire EU. In the States, you need to shop around. You need to go from state to state to apply for a different banking license. But that's, to me, an example of flipping the script. So when it comes to these opportunities to leapfrog, I want to start with you, Imer, and ask you about the clinical trials. You spoke about that earlier today. But here we are, losing the market share globally from 25 to 19% the last decade. So what would it take, in your view, to reverse that trend? And for us, in a few years' time, to be able to say, no, we've done what needed to be done. So let's walk back from that scenario.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And it's something that we think about all the time, actually, because it's really the core of how we demonstrate that Europe is attractive for research that translates into medicines, and that's what I'm interested in. I think, first of all, the figures. It's been, actually, they're stable. You'll always get people who argue with the figures, so I'm not going to do that. But we're seeing stability, but we're not seeing the same growth that is being seen in Europe and, in China or Asia, let's say, and in the US. And a lot of this seems to be about the challenges from startup to scale up. So it's really how you can make sure that you have all the elements in place, not just the regulatory elements. You have to have the financing. You have to have the ability to initiate trials quickly, to put the contracts in place, to integrate them across different countries. And these are things that I don't think we invest enough energy in. I look at it from my perspective and I say, what can we do in the regulatory system? Then we have to make the links with the research system. Then we have to make the links with the whatever you need for site management to set up the clinical trial. That's not under our responsibility. So you sort of see how many actors are involved, and it's only when you look at it, it's only when you're closely involved that you realize that it is a complex ecosystem. And I think we need people to connect the dots and help to bring these ecosystems together, because if we continue working, me as the regulator, somebody else as managing the site, somebody else as providing the finance, I think we're going to continue to have we're going to continue to have time and complexity delays.
I perfectly understand the also institutional complexity in which you need to operate and others need to operate, but like for a harmonized multi-country trial system to genuinely emerge, I mean, it's sort of there in the framework, right? It's envisaged to be there, and yet it's more difficult than meets the eye to get from A to B, and its complexity and all that. But I mean, would you have any ideas on how to break through those? I mean, would it help to start in a smaller group of countries, for example? I mean, there are good examples in the EU of even enhanced cooperation, if that were to be needed, even though here it's not needed because the rules exist, so to say. I mean, what would be now the mechanisms that you think could be applied? And I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here, but this is a session to think openly about the future.
Yeah, so in fact, a lot of this work is already ongoing. And I mentioned in my talk this morning about the Accelerating Clinical Trials in the EU initiative. And that's about bringing together the national competent authorities, the European Commission and the European Medicines Agency, looking at the whole system and how we can work together to make it better. And we have 10 priority areas that we're working on. Including how to manage decentralized trials, how to bring the latest modernizations into the trial systems. But the fundamental challenges with starting multi-country clinical trials are things we still need to work on. I think the good thing is that we have a very high realization that this is an area where there is a need for a much more coordinated approach. And it's part of having worked in a national system, now you have to work in a European system. That's a culture change. But also I have to mention that we have the clinical trials regulation was drawn up at a time when a lot of detail was being put into actual regulation, and that hasn't helped because the legislation is very, very prescriptive, and it's now 11 years old. So you've got a prescriptive requirements for a database, for a system that are already out of date. So one of the things that we're looking at now is how to simplify. And I think that's another very good news, because this is how, between the member states who have to comply with the regulation, between us and the Commission, how can we actually simplify in practice? And that's one of our prioritizations at the moment.
Super, thank you very much. Andrzej, I want to ask you about our approach to breakthroughs. And breakthroughs in general terms, because we need those in order to address some of the fundamental unmet medical needs. I work mostly in brain health fields, and that's a field which has seen some breakthroughs, but it's still in great demand for more. But how do we create avenues for these breakthroughs to be properly recognized, also in the regulatory framework, right? I mean, there is the calls for breakthrough designation with respect to medical devices, right? That you enter into a closer dialogue with the regulator in order to give the innovation a chance. Would this approach, you think, have a chance in Europe in this next period?
Yeah, I will go to this, but just a very short comment on the previous question, because I spent, I think, quite time creating this new environment, starting from the legislation after Stroiber Commission, which came I think end of 2008 or 9 with the statement, we are losing clinical trials. I still remember, because it was in our response as a commission. So we created a new regulation, we created a completely new approach, which calls, I think, in the literature, Europeanization. So we started to move from the national system to European system. It's a little bit to Paweł's point in the opening, we created European system in clinical trials, but to get to the implementation, there's so many hurdles, I even don't like to mention all of them, because I can tell you what's very difficult, very complex process, which continue to be done. And only my, as a former kind of director and responsible for this file, I should say, we should not give up. This is, and of course we should speed up. This is maybe Paweł for Paweł Przywiązkowski, the direction, but is there. But we should not give up, and we should continue, and we have to be also, we should speed up, and on the different levels, European, national, different academic, industry. It's a complex. But on your question, breakthrough. So we have in many areas, we have innovations coming, or we are waiting for innovations. So we put some additional measures in the new pharma package, which is very much on the unmet needs, on the also stimulating, through the different ways. We propose reform of EMA as well, how institutionally, how to make different lessons learned, for example, from pandemic to be implemented already in the package we initiated during pandemics, to help accelerate, some assessment. I think the instruments on the scientific advice, which is today, I think was explained by Emmer, is a very important instrument, and I was chatting with a number of our participants during those 2 days, and it's still very unknown, so even especially for the smaller companies to academy. But really we did a lot to also help with this scientific advice, which is available now, which is I think especially for small spin-offs from academia, is not very expensive. So it is also, we have to watch also what's happening in the world. So we also looking on the across the pond to the US, all these critical parts, we are kind of also trying to have. We have the system to accelerate it assessment. So let's, but in the end also the important is something which we discussed, and I think this should be very much also in this strategy about the implementability and how the innovations in medtech or in pharma or in other innovative area can be implemented into the hospital settings to the patients. So this will be my very last point, that from the discovery to the patient's bed.
Yeah, thank you very much. By the way, I would encourage all the panelists to also react to each other if you want. I will get to everyone slowly. And the same if there are questions in the audience. But Paweł, I would like to ask you for your assessment, again, in the spirit of trying to leapfrog. What would be the top element of your list with respect to the ecosystem, clinical trials? I mean, is it the length of the review process, for example, that in Europe is 3 times longer than in the US? Something like that, at least the maximum length of the review period. Is it new clinical endpoints that you would look for? Is it more reliable measures of outcomes? What would be your main ask, so to say, that could allow us to move sizably faster in this forthcoming period?
So I think that my general answer would be that we need more Europe, simply, and we need more speed. So I think that we are sophisticated enough, and we are maybe in other therapeutic areas, maybe in other we are an oncology company, so maybe in other therapeutic areas, maybe in some other oncology indications, we need some additional endpoints. But in oncology, especially in acute myeloid leukemia, we have surrogate endpoints such as complete responses. We don't need to wait for survival data. So obviously, I would welcome that we have a situation like in the US, where you can have accelerated approvals based on some biomarkers. Whether the countries will reimburse such drugs, it's another thing. It's a kind of thing of economic belief, but scientifically, these drugs are proven to be initially efficacious and safe, and I think that it would be important to have something like this also more broadly applicable in Europe, like in the US. But I think that's not the major problem. The major problem is that I think that the European integration hasn't gone far enough, and I don't know why we need a national competent authority at all. I think that these offices could be just kind of satellite divisions of EMA, and that we should have a single body in Europe that approves clinical trials. And of course, there is question of what to do with these employees who are competent people who have a lot of experience, etc. They could either be, become employees of EMA simply, and we could create, national competency areas in special things such as, I don't know, if we are to review drug approvals in, I don't know, psychiatry, then it can be in Spain. If we want oncology, it could be in Germany or whatever. We can find some way of accommodating all of this kind of brilliant people. Or another option is, okay, we build a coalition of the willing. We can include the countries that, let's say, want to do it, that have enough trust of other countries that they are competent in, approving a trial. And then, if a trial is approved in Italy, it's automatically approved in Poland. And I think that's either we should build a single, let's say, maybe not a market, but a single space for clinical trials. And I think that the same applies to patents. If we have a common market, then we don't need a country patent. So, again, a Polish patent office should be just a kind of fully integrated with the European Patent Office, because what's the point of having a Polish patent if we have a single market? So I think this is an example of where the European integration, harmonization between countries hasn't gone far enough, and this is why we are losing the edge.
Imer, can I ask you to react to these ideas? I mean, but also in the context of, do you think there is more hope in incremental progress, meaning things which you are doing, streamlining, being faster, putting more emphasis on quality, or are some of such ideas which have the intention of breaking through some of the trends that we've been witnessing? Do they hold a promise?
Well, all these things have been debated over the years in many different fora, and people have different views as to whether the centralized model works best or the decentralized model. For clinical trials, the decentralized model has been chosen, but it's a regulation, so it means the same rules are applicable in every country. And effectively, it's a common European platform. It is a coalition of the willing. Maybe you don't see it yet, but that's what the clinical trial regulation is about. It's about one submission, a common workspace where people can work together, and then and then a decision on whether to authorize the trial or not. I think we can do better. I think, and I think we are, and I think there's a great recognition that there are opportunities to continue this journey and do better. Honestly, I don't think a full centralized system would work for clinical trials. It was not the solution of the legislators. It was not the solution of the member states. One of the big challenges is the ethics committee's approval. I don't know how you would manage that from a centralized perspective, but it is clear we need more ethics committee commonality, shall we say. Yes, we need more coordination. We need more risk proportionate approaches. So at the moment, there's timelines, one size fits all. But actually, you have complex trials and you have less complex trials. Maybe we can look at, it is one of the areas we're looking at, do we have to apply the same approaches to everything? A lot of work is going on, a lot of thinking is going into this. I am confident we're going to see results very soon.
Super, thank you very much. I would like to move on to the money question. And I'm looking at Magda in particular here. And again, the logic is leapfrogging, right? And it's not easy with respect to funding because there will be constraints, right? Everybody wants their share in this discussion now about especially the new financial framework. But in research and development, we are in many areas also not doing as great as we think. Our assumption tends to be we are great researchers, and then we have a problem with translational issues. But when you look at some of the forthcoming indicators, for example, research on novel antibiotics and antivirals, and when you look at the number of publications, the number of citations in the main journals, unfortunately, our share is going down. China is going steeply up. So it's not that in research our strong position is cast in stone, right? We need to remember to argue persuasively for funding fundamental research. But I would also like to ask you about sort of the quality of funding in terms of the design. For example, should we have more impact calls in order to respond in a faster fashion to the changing scientific environment? I know I packed a lot in this question, but if you have other ideas for the close to the silver bullet solutions, I mean silver bullets don't exist, but something very meaningful, what would it be?
Okay, well, General, the future of funding is a very hot topic in the European R&D policy. I mean, it is commonly agreed that R&D must be now must be now very high in the European agenda, and I am absolutely sure by now that it will happen. It is happening. In fact, this multi-annual financial framework is being designed exactly now when we are, discussing on this stage, because it is gonna be revealed in July. There is there is a lot of debates in Brussels right now, but also in capitals, of course. Some preliminary schemes are somewhere, in my emails, but of course, the representatives of the European Commission are not very happy to reveal anything. What I suppose will happen, and what I also expect will happen, there will be more impact-driven instruments. Even if, in fact, in Horizon Europe, there is already a number of such instruments, because in Horizon you have everything. In fact, you have top-down and bottom-up approaches in it. And of course, it will be done this way still in the future. But I'm absolutely sure that the future of R&I is about impact-driven calls, and I'm 100% sure the new multi-annual framework will be about impact-driven calls too.
Thank you so much. Paweł, I have a question to you regarding funding for companies like yours and for startups in the field. You once said in an interview that if you had an easy access to funding, you would not have climbed the know-how ladder as quickly as you did. So that was an interesting take, but I'm sure now where you are in a much more mature stage, funding is an issue, right? And European biotechs have, in general, access to about 20% of funding that the US equivalent numbers have. So what would be your sense of expectation vis-a-vis, especially this new approach, which is emerging? Magda gave us a foretaste of that. There was a leak yesterday about the competitiveness funds. We won't get into the details here, but what would be your main expectation vis-a-vis what's coming?
So obviously, people who grow in cold environments, are trained to kind of move faster, yes? And, the rival development style is matching kind of the Polish style. Poland started 35 years ago with a GDP smaller than the Ukraine per capita. Now we kind of are on par with Japan, yes? Yesterday, the Economist called Poland the new Germany. So, obviously we are not there yet, but, running a biotech company on a shoestring budget, of course, teaches you a lot for the future. And this is how we've been developing. So we had the first institutional money 7 years after we had been created. So that was tough. We had to sometimes stop a project for like months because we didn't have $20,000 for an animal study or whatever. But, we are now where we are. And I think for the future, what's important for us is that, the public support in innovation, in innovative drug discovery continues uninterrupted without all of these caveats. So, for example, I don't know, there is an idea now in Poland that small molecule drug development should not be supported anymore because only cell and gene therapy. Someone read, 5 years ago that cell and gene therapy is, the future of pharma. Now cell and gene therapies are maybe not so in fashion anymore. The largest number of companies in the US is based have been created over the last 15 months are actually small molecule companies, then ADCs, then antibodies, then cell and gene therapy, and so we need to either give people freedom or people who design programs should read data from 2025, not from 2020. Yes, so this is an example of what we need to do. At the European level, we need to have continued instruments such as European Investment Bank, loans. I think that what we should consider is that the states, that the countries have more from their investment in grants than they currently do. So I'm not talking about loans because sometimes it's difficult to kind of return a loan, but I'm talking about, converting grants into equity. So that it should be maybe a silent equity, so that the government doesn't start running a company. But I think that the taxpayers should or could get some shares in companies managed by a big fund that would be passive, but they will know that if the company is successful, not only the private shareholders have something out of it, but they also have something out of it directly, not just through kind of trickle-down economics.
Yeah, perfect. Jakob, I listened very attentively to what you said yesterday, and one of the observations was that people in academia and in hospitals are sometimes too reactive, and instead we want them to be, well, proactive and focused on emerging breakthroughs. How do we achieve that? How do we make this happen?
Yeah, well, I also pointed out, and I think the opportunity open for Europe right now is the partnership, and that we're actually able to work together. So there's somebody talking about art of the deal. Perhaps we should excel in art of the partnership. And I think that goes for all of us in the sectors, because looking ahead, it's quite clear the challenges that we're facing. Again, we simply don't have the resources, nor the hands available. But perhaps one could argue, and also getting back to your point from before, leapfrogging, do we need to invent something new? I mean, on the technical side of it, sure. But looking at kind of a systematic level, also with the support systems that we find from the European Commission, could it be that we actually have all the different components in place? On a general term, and I think you were pointing out early on that perhaps it's an opportunity now for us to connect the dots and actually making sure that we know what one another are actually doing. So looking ahead, I see kind of the pieces to the puzzles are more or less laid on the table. So again, leapfrogging ahead might be actually being able to create kind of this partnership image and actually connect the dots. And that also then goes to back to a question for the researchers and university hospitals, that we also need to find ourselves in a position where we don't need to be seen as reactive. And I was speaking to some of the companies here over coffee, and actually if the assumption is that we're seen as reactive, we have a problem. We have a problem by ourselves. We can't solve all of the challenges ahead. We need to partner up, basically. So my question is coming from our side is really, how can we open up shop, so to speak? What is it that we need to provide, being one? And secondly, also opening up for the conversation on what are the needs that we are facing. Because on a daily basis, as head of innovation, I'm bombarded with all kind of tech stuff coming in and all good, clever ideas. But a majority of them doesn't really understand the clinical reality, not able to come up with a sound financial flow, doesn't understand the regulatory pathways and all of that. So we have to be better in also communicating what are our needs, so be more mission-driven or societal-based driven. And I think if we're opening up that game, we can really put some speed into also driving innovation. So point from my side is really out of the partnership. I think we should go that direction, but it also goes for all of us that we should look at our own business and how do we undertake activities, so how can we contribute? Because if we're not able to do so, we won't meet the demands by the end.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes left, and I'm looking around if there are any questions in the room. There is a question already, please. Yeah. Oh, I need to run to you, right? Well, it's sitting too much. No, that's fine. It's fine. I was just sitting too.
No, thank you very much. And again, a very nice discussion and a lot of, I think, things we can agree on. Very much makes sense in all the type of panels. So I'm more wondering, also I'm talking a lot with policymakers, ministries, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. How do we convince them about more investment in health, considering all the problems they have with competing budget requirements, defense, economic contraction, etc. So I suppose clinical trials, etc. For a lot of them, this is a little bit discussion on a different planet. And so we have to come up with a story. Same applies for European citizens. So for 99% of European citizens, this is very much a different planet. So how can we convince their hearts and minds and that European Health Union can work for them? And how does it translate to member states? and stakeholders, and eventually our European citizens. So.
That's a wonderful question for the concluding session. And there could be different takes on this, right? One could look more at what is coming our way in terms of the health risks. One could look at the opportunity from the investment point of view, which is significant. I think a lot of pharma companies assume relatively healthy profit margins in the years to come. One could also look at the empowerment from the human point of view of how we look after each other's health. But I don't want to give my take. I would turn to whoever among the panelists would like to share their reflections on this. How do we take this argument to the top policymaking circles? This is relevant in the context of the budgetary discussion just about to start.
I think sorry, you stay, Jacob. No, I think we are in the era which almost forgotten COVID era. You know, when the health was really on the top of the agenda, political agenda. You know, I as I said, I was 90 years in Brussels, but I never have chance to see the European Summit, the leaders meeting, discuss the health almost in every meeting, you know, and also making decisions, you know, very substantial decisions. So, and then we have the post-COVID moment when we have seen, you know, the kind of fatigue of the crisis, but also simply the budgets, health budgets started to be also decreased because we spent a lot during COVID. A number of things happened, but at the same time we have needs after COVID. And my feeling is now the health is still at least in the somehow there, but is again in the main driver. So answering to Nick, I think it's important to continue explain to the politicians, but also to the citizens. You know, this agenda is on all levels. I don't think I will not take the risk that Europe will take care of the individual citizens, because I think it's against my belief that the things should be solved on the local level, and then, you know, subsidiarity is an issue. So let's continue on this model, but at the same time, this agenda should be somehow on every level. For me, the kind of symbolic is that we have the first time in the history the SANT committee, which is the health committee in the European Parliament, is real, but it's also kind of important news to European citizens.
That's right, and we had the chairman with us yesterday. Magda and then Jakob, yeah.
If I can, yes, I would like to refer to what you have just said and what was asked in the question from our audience. It's true that we have to, watching from the perspective, from the European perspective, I think the European institutions must be indeed in the constant dialogue with citizens, and it's not only about the health sector. It's about it's about everything, and of course I'm focusing on the R&I policy by nature, and we have to recognize and admit that the European Commission during last more or less 2 years, I think, is undertaking a very undertaking and repeating efforts towards being in this dialogue with European citizens. I don't know if you have noticed that there is now a lot of consultations within Horizon Europe. It's a new thing. I mean, it's never been implemented like this before. There are at almost every important occasion, and there are a lot of such occasions in the Horizon Europe's life cycle, there are indeed pan-European consultations. Of course, it is the question if the society as such is ready to really be very much interactive in these consultations. But it's only starting. I believe that it will be that this response of for example, Polish citizens would be bigger and bigger. But it's not that bad. I mean, because I'm really looking at these statistics. I think it's very interesting how it works, how this reaction of the society, of the citizens, is being bigger, because it is increasing. The statistics are increasing. The response statistics are increasing. In this R&I area, of course. So there is an effort on the European level, but I believe that there also must be parallel efforts on the national levels towards the same direction.
Jakob, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if you got your question right, but needless to say, again, I think the narrative we have to communicate, I mean, these are all very technical kind of discussions we're having here. But I think if we are to create the narrative that both goes for politicians, so to speak, and also for the daily person back home, it's about our joint future looking ahead. I mean, we are facing some of the same challenges ahead. For instance, double demographic pressure again. So we know we have an elderly population growing. And simply the argument must be that if we're not investing now, we'll see tremendous problems moving ahead. I think that fairly goes for everybody. And here again, with the partnership notion of Europe, rather than us developing each of our own solutions, doing it in parallel, reinventing the wheel. I mean, the magic, and that actually, when we already shown that also during COVID, that if we collaborate, we can mitigate the challenges that we are facing. So I think again and again and again, we should underline this collaboration agreement. And arguing that, well, there's tons of interesting stuff. What I've just learned here in Kraków, I should go here again and visit. So no need for me to reinvent. I don't have to look for Danish companies. I could just as well be working with Polish. Why not? I mean, we are in the same game and looking into the same challenges. So I think if that's the narrative and we can adhere to that, and we also are open that we understand the differences and difficulties in collaborating, then we can really take some traction on this.
Thank you. We have time for one last question.
Maybe just additional argument that for the patients from this question, how to convince politicians. Of course, we know that participating in clinical trials is good for patients, good for the development of new medicines, but it's also obvious that it's good for the budget for the healthcare, because all the procedures are simply financed by sponsors. So probably preparing a calculation. This brings us, of course, to the topic of patient recruitment, and not only increasing the number of clinical trials, but also more people being qualified, and calculating how the investment on the infrastructure, it's all about the data, maybe artificial intelligence, to create some pan-European system to make it easier to identify the trials for the patient, could benefit in this direct results in decreasing the spend on this particular patients, and this could be quite convincing, in my opinion. So the question, if this was done, maybe this is somewhat in plans in the Act EU, but maybe this could be one of these arguments that will work in really short time, and could be quite convincing. Thank you.
Right. So that's a question of budgetary economic impact assessment, and how do we assess the burden of disease, and hence the savings that we can generate as a result?
Yes.
I can see that there is one more question. This will be the last one, and then we will need to wrap up.
I think that we lost one fundamental thing. What is the aim of the funder and investor perspective in the long term? Won't they just sell the project in the beginning, or just want to, let's say, conduct in long perspective? Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I think I've seen we have a light here, but if you have a question, then this will be the last one.
Thank you very much. Move the faster is the main message from all this conference. And from Ukraine, I represented Ukraine Cluster Alliance and all medical clusters. And it's the main challenges for us, the war. And if included this situation, what your vision, how it change focus of the European development of health sector, included the situation in Ukraine and different dangers that will be in Ukraine or in Europe in next time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So we have literally just a minute each, but if you could please answer those questions which you want to answer, plus have a concluding message for us. Imer, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I was going to answer the first question, but now I think I have 3 to answer. So let me go very quickly. So first of all, I think the patient voice is really important, and we involve patients in all that we do. What we hear from the patients in clinical trials is they want to know what happens to their data. They want to know if a trial fails, if it doesn't fail, what happens, what the benefit is, and then they will communicate. And we're committed to do that, and we do it. Maybe we can do it better. We always can do things better. I think on the financial side, we have to do much more to show the economic benefits of good health and the economic benefits of innovation in health. And we don't do that. We talk to the health ministers, and somebody else talks to the economic ministers. They don't talk together. That's something we need to do across Europe. And then finally, just to get to the Ukraine point, we're working very closely in the regulatory side with Ukraine. Yesterday, I was at a meeting, and the Deputy Minister for Health was there. I think it might be the 3rd time I've met her in the last month. And I'm part of this strategic advisory board to create the new Ukrainian agency, so very much integrating into our European activities already.
Thank you. So I think that regarding generally publicity of what we are doing and communicating with patients, taxpayers, I think that we should also try to first of all restore trust in science, and I think that one of the outcomes of the prevalence of social media has been unfortunately more distrust in science, and we should do something about it, because we cannot allow Russian trolls, for example, to manipulate the Polish public or European public regarding vaccines, stuff like this. So I think that we should, users and platform providers should be accountable for what it's written there. And if someone spreads misinformation, whether it's a kind of stupid person or a bad actor or a dishonest person, it should be possible to kind of sue them and simply, provide the real facts. Without it, we will be subject of potential hybrid warfare. That's one thing. Secondly, I would like to tell you about, a meeting that I just had yesterday or 2 days ago, with Deputy President of Kraków, and I'm on some kind of economic advisory panel, and I told him, please stop treating hospitals just as a kind of burden on the city, people coming from around, creating traffic jams, everybody is unhappy and so on and so on. Please treat it also as a kind of economic engine. What you said about clinical trials, better access to healthcare, before the drugs are reimbursed, and so on and so on. Please treat clinical trials as one of the growth engines of the city, like they do it in the US, where everybody's proud about hospitals in Boston, Stanford, MD Anderson, and so on. Hospitals should be not also centers for help, but economic growth engines.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrzej.
Shortly, I think we had a great 2 days because we met here with almost everybody who may help with the implementation of this strategy, because the writing strategy is one interesting process, but how to make this working actionable, I think this is something for all of us, not just for the Commission colleagues who are holding the pen today. And so this is, for me, is very interesting that we have different sectors, medtech, healthcare, colleagues from hospitals. We have, of course, pharma, biopharma, research community, clusters, people from the city. So let's keep this in mind. This is the joint effort, and I think that it was very interesting. If somebody was reminding you why you don't call this person can help you, So we simply, and even Emers today said, okay, you can come, maybe not every day, but okay, you can make contact with me, and the door is open. So let's keep this openness and also this vision actionable.
Excellent. Thank you, Magda.
Okay, so my farewell message would be to benefit better from what is already on the table. And if anything is not clear in the funding European system, you can benefit from the free of charge consulting services of the National Contact Point, of course, at NCBR. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Jakob.
Thank you so much. Well, as a matter of fact, we are taking the torch, so to speak, from this conference here. As you know, Denmark will host the EU presidency as of 1st of July. And we are going into a similar direction to this of kind of a conference setting on 17th, 18th September. And I've just decided that we have to go into action mode, because I think what we also had the discussions undertaken here, really know that when we go into nitty-gritty parts, this is probably what is needed to be discussed, again, following to the conversation I had with some of the companies here as well. So hopefully we'll see you in Denmark in a few months' time. And then I think also, if I may, as the audience, a great thanks to the organizers of this splendid conference. You set the bar high, and I think with the fruitful conversations and the networking here, I mean, if I may, shouldn't we give the organizers a big applause?
Jakob, this is a perfect segue for me to pass on the microphone to the one and only Kazimierz Murzyn. But before I do that, I would really like to thank all of you for sharing your perspective. I think we have a bit of a perfect storm for life sciences, but a lot of opportunities can result from that. And sometimes it's worth thinking about these escape velocities, namely these projects that can really push us out of the comfort zone and move us faster. So I think we tried to do that during the panel, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you for that, and I hand over to our beloved host.
Thank you very much. Thank you for these words. This is kind of. Please sit down, please, because that will be mess. I want to make it quickly because it will not take long. Just to draw your attention to this drawing over there, which actually kind of summarizes your discussion here. So you will receive this later on. Okay. Thank you very much for this conference, for you actually participating in this conference and making this conference, I think, successful. Yes. And if you ask me what is the recipe for successful conference, for good conference, I don't know if the success will come, because we will actually expect this success come later on with the report we are preparing we'll prepare after the conference and distribute widely in the Europe. Nice picture here. Widely in Europe, and with the hope that it will be used, because yesterday I heard several words which said great discussion, but make it doable, make it that it is built. Yes, exactly. So that something will happen after that. So the recipe for good conference, Jakob, it's to you. The recipe for good conference is actually collect the people who are smarter than you. That will be difficult in your case. But and ask them good questions, and you will have something actually to digest after that. So thank you very much for being a part of this conference. Thank you to all speakers and also moderators, especially today, Stami, Tomasz, and Pavel, because you made this conference also great and these outcomes. Thank you for my staff, which is. I'll name it. Renata, Viola, Beata, Emma, Joanna, Grzegorz. They are here. Of course, we have to thanks to all our friends who help us to organize this conference, namely the City of the Kraków, Jagiellonian University, Ministry of Higher Education and Science, Science and Higher Education, sorry, and that's it, I believe. Okay, so you've been great, and so without you, and European Commission, of course, I was looking after that, and without you, that wouldn't be possible. And last word, come to Kraków again, come to LifeScience Kraków. Thank you.